It can only be attributable to human error.
You're entering paranormal.
He meddled in things that you think before. He meddled in things which... He meddled in...
Where will we go next? Just a phantom from another time.
No one, Mr. Mulder.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
That is one big pile of shit.
Hey everyone, welcome to Cryptid Campfire. I'm your host, Eli Watson. And today, I'm joined by a very special guest, someone I've been trying to get on the podcast forever, who has consistently denied my requests, but I finally got him to cave. It is Todd Hale of the Olympic Project. Hello, Todd.
Hello, Eli. Hello, kids out there. It's your lucky day. Thanks for having me on. I've been trying to get on here for a long time. You never let me on, so.
You're going to spin the narrative.
Yeah.
So, Todd, if I may share, the first time I ever saw you was back in April of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
It was when we were shooting on the trail of Bigfoot, the Discovery. It was raining at the nest site, and you were standing by the campfire, throwing beer cans into the fire and saying, "I hate the rain." And I said, "Who is this guy? Why is he here? I don't like him." By the end of the week, we were best friends.
That's how it is. I at that time, April, for me, I work construction. I'm outside a lot. So by the time April rolls around, I've been working in the rain for 6 months and I'm sick of the rain. It's cold, it's wet, So when we went to shoot and we hiked down in the nest area and it was raining, I was not a happy camper. So yeah, and I have that effect on people. They don't know what to make of me because I just say what's on my mind. I do have a filter, despite some people thinking I don't have a filter. I do have a filter. I could say much worse, but yeah, people never know what to do with me. But once you get to know me, I think I'm pretty awesome.
Yeah, you're a badass.
I'm an American badass. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've been with the Olympic Project for several years.
Yeah, 2017. So over 6 years now.
Wow. What's that been like?
It's been awesome. The stuff I used to do in California when I thought I was doing research and I wasn't having much luck.
Well, you don't
so
mind.
much.
Let's talk about
say it's so much different than the stuff we do with the OP now, where there's known locations where the Sasquatch are, and dealing with that kind of stuff. A lot of equipment, audio, thermals. So it's been awesome. It still is. We're still doing it, so I love it.
Well, speaking of the SoCal stuff, that's where you started. You're my Temecula bro.
Yeah.
You lived in Temecula for a little bit, and that's where I'm from.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm doing that series, Mysteries and Monsters, on the Small Town Monsters YouTube channel. And you're pretty prominent. Out of 8 episodes, I think you're in 6 of them.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
One interview, you've been able to stretch it out for me.
Yeah.
Every time, it's pretty funny.
Yeah. Well, you started researching Bigfoot in SoCal.
And go, I was born in 1971 near East LA. No. Yeah. The Bigfoot stuff was always around for me. TV, In Search of, and the Patterson Gimlin film, and books. I think I've said it before. I think I checked my first Bigfoot book out at my school library in 4th grade. And
remember what book it was?
No, I remember what the cover looks like, but I haven't been able to find it. I suppose it's that might have been just a different cover for that printing. No, I don't know what book it is. I've looked around. I have a lot of Bigfoot books myself, and I don't have that particular cover, but I'm sure it's a pretty famous book from the 70s. It's still around. I don't know. So unfortunately, no. Then I was hooked. We moved out to Upland when I was a kid in 1978. I lived off of Euclid and 20th Street, and they built five custom homes cut into some orange groves. So it was pretty wild. You could go down the street. There was a rock quarry. There's orange groves behind us, orange groves across the street, and you could go up to the foothills right there of Mount Baldy on your bike. And there were some reports around there that I'd heard about, but I didn't really think I'd ever see something there, even though I'd heard about people seeing stuff there. I just assume these things are up in the mountains, and especially Pacific Northwest. I wasn't really thinking about Southern California as a kid, as far as Bigfoot goes, even though you'd hear some stuff here and there, but I actually didn't think it was true in that area. I had a friend growing up. I must have been in like 6th grade on that same street. He said he saw Bigfoot walking down the street one night. He looked out his bedroom window. I never believed him, but looking back on it, I mean, who knows? It could have been true. It's the prime area. There's other reports just like 2 miles east of there in Rancho Cucamonga later years. And then I had my Big Bear incident happen in 1986. So
Right. Which I've had you tell me twice
I've told that story so many times. Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I want to say for the listeners, if you're unaware of Todd's story, check out the first Southern California episode for my series Mysteries and Monsters. I think it's called Legend of the SoCal Sasquatch on YouTube. If you type that in, I do a little recreation of Todd Hale's sighting that happened in Big Bear, where I dressed up. I filmed it on location, and I dressed up in a Bigfoot costume.
That was a great recreation too. I've told people about it.
Yeah.
That was a really good recreation. I was older than those kids, but that doesn't really matter. And the Bigfoot, the way you filmed it in the recreation, in reality, it was further away. But I mean, those are just small details. That thing was the recreation was really good. I was surprised when I saw it. I was so pumped. That's when I called you about it. I was like, dude, you did a great job in that recreation. That's basically how it was,
Yeah, it was worth it. I got a couple people drove by. I got caught in their headlights, and they just kind of stopped and stared and then kept driving.
You're going to get shot.
I was in a neighborhood, though. It doesn't look like it, but I was right in front of someone's house.
Yeah. The actual sighting location was not in a neighborhood. It was on the edge. And I've actually been there many times trying to find out where it was. My parents couldn't remember where we stayed. I asked them over the years. I would drive around Big Bear trying to find that cabin and that location. I never was able to. I suspect that by the time I was up there looking for it in the 90s, that the area might have been developed and might have been logged and built on, because I can never find it. I could be completely wrong, but for some reason, I always thought it was over near Fawnskin, actually.
Oh, so on the other side of Big Bear Lake.
Yeah, but there's no reason for me to think that other than just the feeling I get when I'm over there and the look of everything. Like 1997, I took a trip up there and I was really trying to find this place. I spent 2 days looking for it. And when I was over there in Fawnskin, that place was really giving me the vibe of where that was, but I could be completely wrong. It's just a guess, just so yeah, there's no way to go back and recreate it. I was never able to find that place again. It's just somewhere up there in Big Bear, which it's unfortunate. I really wanted to picture where this thing was and actually take measurements, but I never found it.
Bummer.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any idea of how tall that thing was?
No, but it was at least as big as my dad, if not bigger. My dad was 6'4", and it was a lot thicker. It looked like someone wearing winter type clothes. I wrote that in the report on Bobby Short's website. It's hard to judge distance and size especially at night and as quick as everything happened. It was under the street light, but you still had the snow. But just in my memory, it was as big or larger than my dad, easily. Adult man size or larger. I suspect it was larger.
Yeah.
If you actually went over there, it's hard to tell.
So let's talk about, you reported it to Bobby Short's website, Bigfoot Encounters. What made you decide to do that so many years later?
Because my wife and I actually got our first computer in 2001 with internet, which was a pretty big deal. Before that, my mom had a computer with internet from like 95 on, but we didn't get our own until 2001. And I'd already been looking. Anytime I'd go over to my mom's and jump on the computer, I'd always look up Bigfoot stuff. But then once I had my own computer and internet, I was looking up Bigfoot stuff a lot because I was really getting into it again. And I wanted to go to these locations and try and see what I could find. So then I was on Bobby Short's website and I'd seen some San Bernardino stuff. And I said, I'm just going to submit my story. And I asked her to withhold my name, but she didn't. My name's in the report, which at the time I was really worried about with work and everything else, because this is still really a taboo subject. People think it's a lot more popular now, but people think you're kind of nuts now if you believe in this thing or you talk about this thing. You should have tried it over 20 years ago. It was way worse. So just my name being in that report, I was very nervous for like a year, having to do with work or anything else. But nothing even happened. It ended up being fine.
So when did Daniel Perez of the Bigfoot Times reach out to you?
I don't know how many days it was or a week later. I forget. But he ended up calling me a Sunday night at like 7 p.m. And my phone rang. And my wife answers it. And she says, it's a guy named Daniel Perez for you. I said, Daniel Perez, the Bigfoot guy? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, there's one Daniel Perez I know from high school, but I'm like, there's no way this guy's calling me. It's got to be for Bigfoot. And it was. So then he interviewed me on the phone and then he's like, well, I'm going to put this in the Bigfoot Times. This is just another one for this, the SoCal mountains. And that was it. I mean, I was heavily involved with racing and motocross, and I didn't meet anybody or do anything much else till 2008. So 7 years later. I would go to our local mountains. I would look for tracks and I'd go fishing and look for stuff, but I wasn't really doing like overnighters or backpacking or anything like that in Southern California. So I really got hooked up in 2008 after I'd gone to a conference in Santa Cruz.
What conference was it?
That was Bigfoot Discovery Days 2 at Mike Rogue's museum in actually Felton, California. I bought my tickets through Tom Yamarone. So they were like a will call situation. So I didn't even know who Tom Yamarone was. I didn't really know anybody. So I found him and he's like, hey, nice to meet you. I was there with my brother. Right away, he's like, hey, you want to meet Bob Gimlin? I said, the Bob Gimlin? He's like, yeah, he's around the corner. I said, hell yeah. I'm like, this is insane. And then like that day and that weekend, I met like 50 Bigfoot researchers that I know to this day. Like a lot of big name people were there, from California, Southern California, the Sierras.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where like my more my field work with other people, that's where it took off after making those connections.
Nice. Is that where you met Shane?
No, Shane was in Oregon at the time. It's kind of funny though. I first talked to him in 2013 on the phone. I used to listen to his different podcasts, and he always talked about Southern California and going up to the Sierras and stuff. So I sent him a message on Facebook, and we hooked up and called each other, or I called him or he called me, I forget. And we talked about Southern California. We were on the phone for a long time, and it's funny, he was going to the same area as I was, in my early days. And who knows, we might have even seen each other, but it's pretty funny because he used to do the same thing I did. like print out reports and go to the locations and, go fishing with the side note of kind of looking for Bigfoot stuff. Same areas too, like down by Julian and Lake Cuyamaca and Big Bear. It's funny, man. That's where Shane and I's relationship kind of started. Even though, I wasn't anywhere near Washington or the Olympic Project or any of that. No, but back then in 2008, I met Bob and Kathy Strain. I met Tommy Amarone. I met Bobo, Scott McLean, Terry Smith. I could go on and on. I met Bart Catino. He's one of my good buddies now. And Robert Leiderman. I mean, I could just drop names for a long time, but, that's kind of boring. So I just met a lot of people and, things got going. It was cool.
Cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah. In 2012, I got invited to the Bill Munn's Bluff Creek expedition. We spent a week on the trip, but we were actually in camp and going down to Bluff Creek, I think 4 days in a row, and we were doing a lot of measurements. And I haven't read Bill Munn's book. I have it, but I suppose a lot of the stuff we did there are in his book. We were carrying stuff down there for him. And
tell me about that trip, because I don't know much about it. I know Daniel Perez was there.
Yeah, he was there with his dog. I got lucky on that one because I knew Terry Smith and Tommy Amarone. I got lucky being invited on that trip. I think there were 15 people on that expedition.
Dang.
I have a lot of pictures and videos. I don't know if I can name everyone on the trip, but Bart was there, Cliff was there, Scott McLean, Bobo, Terry Smith, myself, Tom, Bill Munns, Daniel Perez, Rowdy Kelly, Steven Stroifert. I know there's some other people, they're just slipping my mind right now. I can't think of the names right now. But yeah, it was a cool trip.
What was the purpose of the trip?
The trip wasn't a Bigfoot expedition per se. It was basically because the Bluff Creek Project had found the film site location, and they wanted to take Bill Munns down there to verify and do a lot of measurements and just document everything, as well as Daniel Perez. So that was pretty cool. I'd never been there before or since. I've only been there one time, that trip.
I was there almost 10 years later in 2021.
Yeah. Did you hike down to the film site?
I did. Yeah. I camped out there for a night. So
yeah, that would have been cool. We didn't do that. We were hiking up and out of there every day.
Dang. That's rough.
Yeah. Going down there in the morning, coming out in the afternoon, day after day after day. It was pretty exhausting, but that's what I signed up for.
Cool. So I guess all of that can be read about in the When Roger Met Patty by William Munns.
I suppose it could, huh?
Well, it's not a visual podcast. I gotta tell people what I'm talking about.
And Robert Leiderman's book.
And Leiderman
mentioned that, yeah.
What's that one called? That is, I think it's just called the Bluff Creek Project.
Yeah, it's a thick one, huh?
Yeah.
I got 6 signed copies when that book came out from Robert. And I was buying them and giving them to people.
I need to get a signed copy.
Yeah, you need to hook up with him and have him sign it.
Yeah, I actually stayed at his house after I stayed at Bluff Creek.
Oh, cool. I've never been there.
He's got redwoods in his backyard that he planted.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
That dude is a big nature lover.
Yeah, he came up here last year in February with Bart, and we did some camping in Central Washington. So that was cool. I got to see him again because I hadn't seen him for a long time.
Yeah, Leiderman's a good dude. So, okay, wow. So you did that. So you're big time.
In the tiny Bigfoot world, maybe. I don't do any conferences, though.
You're like one of these behind the scenes dudes who's just there.
That's how I like it. I like just hanging out, just hanging around.
You were there when Bart got his footage, weren't you?
I was.
Did you want to talk about that, or do you want to save that for something else?
You could touch briefly on it.
Okay.
it's
don't have to talk
it's
about
controversial just because of who was involved and all the circumstances, but the thermal footage is legit. We went up there to shoot some B-roll for Rose Film. I'd never met anyone on this trip except for Bart. So we went up there. Ro and I were just going to share gas money. I was talking to him a bit because I wanted to, go out in Southern California with him. Like, hey, let's do some day trips up in the Southern California mountains, because I knew stuff was going on. But anyway, we went up there, shot some B-roll during the day. That night, some Sasquatches came into the camp area. Bart filmed them. They were hanging out in the area for at least an hour and a half. I don't know the exact timeline. I'd have to look back on my notes, but they were hanging out for a while, and there were more than one. And yeah, that's basically it. It was the scariest night of my life. I thought they were going to come in and attack us because Justin was laying on a cot in front of us. And I figured they might be able to recognize him because he'd spent a lot of time up there. And a lot of people don't believe his story. It really doesn't matter because the Sasquatches were there 2 weeks prior and that weekend. So they were in that area. Stuff had gone on 2 weeks prior. It's a long story. I was not there. That's why we went up there so quickly. And yeah, you have to look into the recreation stuff that Bart and Robert Leideman did with all. Kip Morrow was involved too. There's a lot of people up there. I didn't go up for the recreation stuff, but where these things were, how big they were, it's a very long story. It's really in depth, but yeah, I was there.
Okay. Well, I might cover that at some point in my career. Cover that story.
That'd be cool. Phil Poling did a breakdown on that video. I believe it's on his YouTube page. I cannot think of the YouTube account right now. Oh, he does the video is called Para Breakdown, and he used to break down a lot of Bigfoot videos, and he would try and determine if they're real or not. And he did a breakdown of Bart's video. It's about a 15-minute YouTube video.
Interesting.
If you search on YouTube, Para Breakdown, Bart Catino, thermal footage, I'm sure it would come up.
Good deal. So after that, you got involved with the Olympic project, and now you hang around.
Yep, I moved to Washington in August of 15, and I didn't move here for Bigfoot. It's just coincidence. I moved here for a job. I wasn't doing all that much stuff here in Washington. I was very busy with work. I would hit up the Cascade area, up by Greenwater, and just drive around and get out of the car and walk around and look for stuff. But I didn't really hook up with any researchers up here for probably about a year and a half. I was invited to Beachfoot. I went to Beachfoot. I met Derek. I knew Shane from the phone, but it's when I met Shane in person and a bunch of the OP guys. And then later on, I went on a public expedition with the OP as kind of a guest of Shane's. And then after that, Derek made me a member. And then months later, they took me in the nest area, which was, everything just happened really fast. Boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm still a member. I'm still going to the nest area, though I don't go as often as those guys do. Chris, Rebecca, and Shane are in there a lot more than I am.
Well, one thing I was actually still thinking about SoCal.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like you said towards the beginning of the show, what you do now with the Olympic project, you guys camp out a lot. You guys hike pretty far in.
Yeah.
Game cameras and sound equipment. What you've learned now with the Olympic project, if you could go back to SoCal, how would you do things differently?
Oh, it's a whole nother ball game with OP. The stuff I do here in Washington, I don't know how comfortable I would feel doing in California because of the rattlesnakes. Because we're crawling through brush, we're busting through a bunch of huckleberry and brush. And to do that in California with the possibility of rattlesnakes would be pretty sketchy, but you could get into deeper remote areas in the Southern California mountains, providing you're not crawling through bushes like that. But if you could get into a deeper area and spend some time in there, I think you'd have a lot better luck. The population in California has exploded, and there's so many more people there than here.
Mhm.
The best bet into California, I would hope, would be to get under some permission for someone's private property, so you're not dealing with anybody in the public traipsing through there, hiking through there, or possibly trying to hoax you.
Mhm.
That's the kind of situation we have here, where when we're using our equipment and we're out traipsing around in the woods, there's no people in there, and we know there's going to be no people in there. That's the greatest thing about it. It's just so much different here in Washington.
Yeah.
So yeah, my advice would be get as deep as you can, go where you don't want to go, because that's how the nest area is. It's nasty. That's why they're in there. And your best bet, even if you're like down by Palomar or towards San Diego, if there's private property, see if you can contact the owners and get permission to go on there. Because I have permission to go on some private property very close to my house here, just by chance. Because I always look, I go out in the woods here by my house, like a couple miles away. It's hard to explain, but they're doing a lot of development. I live in a big, giant community they're developing, and they'll cut a new road into the woods. So then it's like fresh powder where they graded it. So I'll go driving through there and I'll look for tracks. The chances of finding Bigfoot tracks are probably slim to none, but I still do it because you never know. There's reports here in the old days.
Mm-hmm.
And if they cut a new road into the woods, you never know. You might be cutting through an area where these things live. So I'll always go look for tracks. And one day I found a new road and I started driving down there, and this guy on a Jeep stopped me and he's like, "Hey, you know you're on private property?" I said, "What? No, there's no gates. There's no fence." He's like, "No, because they just cut this in. This is my new easement." And he's like, "Well, what are you doing?" I go, "I'm looking for animal tracks." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then we got to talking about Bigfoot, because I don't care about hiding anymore. I said, "Hey, you ever seen any Bigfoot back here?" And he's like, "No." I go, because that's actually what I'm looking for. I'm looking for Sasquatch tracks on these fresh cut roads. He's like, "Oh, okay. And he's like, "I had an army buddy that was all into that," because the guy's from Ording, right down the hill here. And he said his buddy had an encounter down here by Ording and he was all into it, but he never knew if he believed him. I said, well, if he got all into it and he was spending time in the woods going to look for these things, it's probably legit. I don't know why he would want to waste his time. I said, and that's basically why I'm here, because there's a lot of old reports here. There's some newer reports down by Ording, and you just never know. These things could walk up and hit these roads. So it ended up being his private property. And I asked him if he minded if I went back there. He said, no, just don't make a mess. Don't leave trash, which I never do. And he said, yeah, go ahead. You can hike around here. You could camp. You can do whatever you want. It was 30 something acres back here he had. So I was like, oh, cool. So like I said, if you can get permission to go on some people's private property and do some Bigfoot type stuff, I think that's your best bet versus just normal campgrounds where you're dealing with the public and music and noise and dogs. It contaminates your audio. You want your audio to be clean. When it's dark, you want it to be quiet. So that's my advice.
So what is the tactic when it comes to looking for these things? What kind of equipment do you use?
My personal tactic is just acting like you're camping.
Yeah.
Obviously, you could put out cameras, or I don't always put out cameras, but I do always put out audio. Say, for instance, okay, I'm going to the nest area. We're coming to the gate. I'll start rolling audio like 90% of the time before I get to the gate. Because you know how many times David Ellis and other people have had a knock or a whoop or something happen when you get out of your vehicle. So I want the audio to be rolling as soon as I enter the area. And I'll drive in there slow with my windows down. I turn off the music. So if anything occurs, any kind of scream, whoop, knock, my audio recorder will pick it up on my drive in. You know what I mean? And I'll try and drive pretty slow so there's not a lot of road noise. tactic wise, I don't have too many tactics. You're not going to fool these things. They know you're there. There's no sneaking in on them. There's no fooling them. They're very smart. They know that area like the back of their hand. And if you've ever been camping, you can hear a truck coming down the road. You can hear it for a while on the gravel roads or the dirt roads. They know you're coming. So we just get out, set up our tents, put out our equipment, just act like we're camping. And then we'll just start a fire. Sometimes you do a cold camp. Just start a fire, just talk normal and act normal. And some nights you get lucky and some nights you don't. Sometimes they're around, sometimes they're not. But just because nothing happens doesn't mean they're not around. Maybe they just don't want to deal with you that night.
Oh.
Because there's been many times we're in the nest area and we think nothing's going on. We get home and review the audio and they were there. They just didn't choose to interact or make any noise. It'll happen after you go to bed.
When you say they were there, what do you mean? How can you tell that?
Oh, because you go to bed around 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. you get the clearest, loudest knock right next to the cars, or a whoop, or a vocalization. A lot of stuff happens after you go to bed. Some of the stuff happens while you're awake and you actually don't even hear it. The recorders are so sensitive. If you have audio 100 yards down the road and they're in between the audio and you're going to pick them up, versus you talking by the fire. I always try and run 3 recorders. Typically, if we're doing any night hikes, I have one on my head. I'll have one on my truck or near my truck, and I'll have one down the road or off in the bush someplace. Just because you want to try and triangulate where that sound came from. Because a lot of times one recorder is not enough. It'll be picking up noise of the camp and you don't get the vocalization. But if you have one down the road, it'll get the vocalization really clear and not pick up the camp noise. So you can cross-check, okay, this is where this thing was. Or if Chris or Shane or Rebecca will say, hey, where do you have your audio? I have it over here. They're going to put it the opposite way. So sometimes we'll have a lot of different recorders going and you can really figure out where this thing was by how loud the audio is on the recorder, obviously, right? And a lot of times in our camp areas in the nest area, these things approach from the same direction repeatedly. They're creatures of habit. So I can't tell you how many times you've gotten audio from the same place, big branches being broken or a tree pushed over, whoops, yells, the same typical Sasquatch stuff. I'm actually pretty used to it now. My goal is to see one. I've wanted a daytime sighting for years, full daytime sighting. I want to look in its face, look at its face, look into its eyes, all that. Will I be traumatized? It's possible, but that's my goal. I don't think I will. I've been doing this a long time now. It's not like I'm going to be surprised. I'm like, oh, they are real. I already know they're real, but I want to see one close up.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm at with this whole thing.
All right, then I have a question for you. Say you're hiking in the woods. You're all by yourself. And you see a tree that's been broken. And it ends in a point. And a Sasquatch falls out of another tree and impales itself on this other broken tree.
Yeah.
What do?
I'm going to start hacking that thing into pieces. First, I'm taking some pictures and video, and then I'm going to start cutting that thing in pieces. And those pieces are going to be going to 3 or 4 different locations. That's what I'm going to do. We used to kind of have a plan for that in the Sierras, involving refrigerator trucks and the media. And there was some crazy talk we had going 10 years ago in the Sierras about this kind of thing, because I personally don't trust the federal government, and I don't trust the military or rangers when it comes to this subject. I know they know about these things, and I've heard some crazy stories about stuff disappearing, or I don't even know if it's true, but I tend to think some of the stories have to be true. If anything, this is a wild animal. Okay, we're not dealing with a teddy bear in the woods. It's a wild animal. And I think they will attack you if provoked, or if there's a young nearby. even though I think the chances are slim. I think that's blown way out of proportion. But anytime that kind of thing has happened, if anybody's been hurt by a Sasquatch, it always seems to be that they make them say it's a bear, or they report it was a bear. And I could be totally off base with this. I may be buying too much into the conspiracy theory thing, but I think they have attacked people or hurt people. And if it was found out, if the people survived it, it's always a bear or it was a cougar or something. So I wouldn't tell anybody about it. I'd be chopping this thing up in pieces, giving a piece to this person, give a piece to this person. They're all going to leave in different vehicles. And I'm not going to work. I'm going to be doing some crazy things with all these pieces. They're going to be in multiple locations, in refrigerators. And I would probably drive a piece over to Jeff Meldrum personally. I don't know when, but I actually don't know who to contact about all that. What if you had a piece? Who are you going to contact? You're going to contact the news, the media? You're going to contact a university? You're going to contact the Forest Service or police? No, I don't know.
Meldrum
I don't trust a whole lot of them.
Yeah. It would be Meldrum or Cliff, I think, or both.
Oh, Cliff for sure. My phone would be. Yeah, I've thought about this, and that's basically what I do, but I haven't thought beyond that. Like, what would you actually really do? You have this pieces of this thing in your hands, because it seems so abstract, like so out of reach, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna find a dead one. I think the chances of that are like slim to none.
How come?
Because I think they take care of each other. These things are very intelligent, living in family groups. And if one were to die or get hurt, I think they take care of each other.
Like bury them or hide their body, or
that's very possible. Yes. Or get them away from the human area, like a road or a camp area.
Yeah.
That's my personal belief. But I don't think these things are human. And I don't think they're magical forest beings.
Right.
They're just an intelligent animal, which most intelligent animals mourn their dead, or they don't bury them. But I think these things might. I think these things are right in between ape and human, personally. They're a lot smarter than chimps or gorillas. But sure, I've heard it said many times, they're the ninjas of the woods. People are smart, but people aren't animal smart in the woods. You know, it all depends on what you think is smart. Yeah, we're smart with constructing things, building things on our computers. Yeah, but go out in the woods and survive. The animal's going to survive better than you every time, no matter how smart you are.
It's true. It's true. Speaking of, so we talked about sound recorders a little bit. How about trail cameras? Do you guys factor in trail cameras?
Yeah, we have cameras out in different locations. I think they're watching you set up the cameras, or a lot of people don't put their cameras the way we put ours. People just strap them to a tree. That's just dumb as hell. Any animal can see a camera. How many videos have you seen? Animals just walking along and they just look at the camera. They either see it, they smell it, or they hear it. They know it's there every time. Even the way we place our cameras, we hide them in stumps and cover them with moss, and you'll put them at the base of a tree and cover it with moss. You'll never know it's there. As a human, us walking through the woods, you will not see it. But every animal I've gotten on my cameras sees it every single time. So I think it's a sound thing. It's an electronic sound thing, or it's an EMF thing, or they just flat out see the lens, the reflection of the lens. I don't know what it is. I know Sasquatches have been captured on game camera. I've seen them myself. They'll never be released to the public because people don't want to deal with the crap, because there's so much crap in this subject and a lot of wackos. People don't want to deal with it. So they'll bring you a video or a picture like at a conference, and they'll show you but they don't want to show the public. Derek's seen them, Shane's seen them, I've seen them, Chris. We've had some good stuff happen in the nest area, some strange things with the cameras, but nothing that you would release to the public because it'll just get shredded. Everyone wants that perfect HD video of a Sasquatch right in front of the camera, and it hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
I know of one video where the Sasquatch is close enough. It's like from the knees to the armpits. I know it's legit. It's real. But it'll never be released to the public because it'll be scrutinized up and down. Oh, this is a suit, or this. You can tell it's not a suit. It looks exactly like the PG film, but modern day. And for that matter, Bart's thermal looks like the PG film. The way the butt is so big on the animal and the thighs are so thick, you can tell there's a lot of weight behind it, and it steps like Patty. So, yeah, cameras. It's very frustrating. People say, "Oh, with all the game cameras out there, we'd have them." Well, we do. People do, but they don't release it. A lot of stuff you see on social media is a bunch of garbage, and even if it's not garbage, if it's real, people will still talk crap about it and say it's a hoax. So what's the point of releasing it?
Right.
There is no point. There's no point. It's frustrating for me that the whole Bigfoot community is so toxic.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I don't post anything on social media anymore having to do with Bigfoot. It's so frustrating. I learned my lesson 10 years ago with posting stuff on Facebook and going to these groups and talking, and you can just argue for 24 hours a day with idiots about Bigfoot. It's a complete waste of time.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah, there's no point in arguing about Bigfoot on social media. Social media for me is what I use for fun. And I tell people all the time, even with the nest area, I wish I could take you in the nest area and show you all the stuff, but I can't. You can't reveal the location. You can't, even everything that's been said about the nests and everything we found, people only hear what they want to hear. You can say, this is what went on. This happened over here. This is tracks were over here. We have hair over here. And they'll just brush over all that and say, oh, it was just some people messing with you.
Yeah.
You've been there.
Oh, yeah.
What are the chances you think are people down in those ravines messing with you?
That's the thing, right? It's like, when it comes to hoaxing stuff, the number one goal of hoaxing something is with the hopes that someone's going to find it.
Yes.
Building nests in that ravine, in those ravines down there, that's not... Who would ever find that?
Nobody.
That's
why it's just ridiculous, the stuff you have to deal with.
Right? It took
people...
What is it? A timber cruiser is the one who found it.
Yeah.
A dude who's out there in the middle of nowhere.
And it freaked him out.
Yeah.
I've heard of these nests being in... Well, obviously, these nests have been found in other areas, made out of other materials, like up above, I think it's Scorpion Creek. Lyle Laverty found a nest down by Bluff Creek. There's been nests found in British Columbia. Shane's better at rambling off where these nests have been found. Sure. I'm not, but there's been nests found in the past. Mel Scan, the native guy over by Mount Adams, Yakima Reservation, I believe he's found nests over there. Other people have found them in actually blueberry areas where our nests are in evergreen huckleberry.
I just talked to a dude out of Southern California. He doesn't want his name attached to the story publicly, but he used to live right there in the Cajon Pass along the Mojave Riverbed. And
like Hesperia.
Kind of Hesperia, but a little bit
Oak Hills.
South. Yeah, somewhere in there. I forget exactly. I wish I had my notes. But basically, he said on a couple of occasions, he had come across what he would describe as nests. Like once or twice, he said.
Yeah.
Where grass had been ripped up and arranged in a circular motion. He would find food wrappers in there, just
Interesting.
empty food wrappers, but never like a homeless encampment where it was like a bunch of human stuff or clothes or whatever. It was always just perfectly arranged grass that had been organized in that way, like it
Yeah.
had been ripped up and placed there. And they always looked like beds, but it was right there in the riverbed. So like anytime it rained or it flooded through, it would wash all that stuff away. And it was made out of grass. I'm sure by the time summer came along, all that stuff just withered away anyways. But
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
yeah,
That's interesting. There's some reports back there from the 90s or 2000s. Some stuff was on the BFRO website
yeah,
right there behind Big Bear and the Mojave River. Yeah, there was some stuff going on there. I was following that years ago.
yeah. But that was the first time I've come across nests being found in SoCal.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Yeah,
So are you in contact with the guy?
yeah, yeah.
Is he a researcher or is he just like an outdoor guy?
He's just an outdoor dude. He ended up joining, that was back in the day, back in the late 80s. And he ended up joining the military. He ended up in a different state now. But he watched my SoCal series on mysteries and monsters and
Mm-hmm.
decided to reach out to me. He got my email and
You know,
reached out to me that way. So
what's really cool is as soon as that first episode came out, I had people messaging me on Facebook out of the blue from
Mhm.
Southern California. People lived in Long Beach, people live in Temecula, people live in Lakewood, Upland, Rancho, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they're telling me their stories, stuff they find or they've had sightings." And so that stuff is more recent. The last report I got down there was in 2014. I talked to the guy directly. He called me.
Mm.
Someone put me in contact with him, and he was up by Mount Baldy camping. I think it was September, or it was spring or fall. I don't remember. Anyway, he was chopping firewood about 5 p.m, getting ready for the evening, and he noticed something. It just stood up. There was a boulder field, gray granite boulder field, and this thing had been crouched down there watching him chop firewood. And he says he didn't notice it because it blended right in. And when it stood up is when he saw it, and it did a 180, turned around like normal, and just walked up the hill out of sight. Just like a typical Bigfoot report. It's watching people do stuff, whatever activity they're doing. He was chopping wood, and then it just turned around and walked away. That's their biggest downfall, is their curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
I think most of the time they don't want anything to do with people or humans, but then sometimes they can't help it. They have an urge to come in and watch what you're doing. A lot of primates like that,
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that I'm counting on when we go camping in different areas. Is we drive in the trucks, we set up a camp, and we don't do calls, we don't do knocks. We just do normal camping stuff, act like normal people. Now, if we're there 3 or 4 nights and nothing's going on, we will do calls or knocks just to try and stir something up, because we're not having any luck anyway.
Right.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I know a lot of people that are really aggressive, and they'll just start throwing rocks and sticks and going crazy like the first night. But we don't do that.
I've never had any luck doing that.
They might be scared. They might be like, hell, these people are crazy. I'm out of here.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, who knows, I don't think they're afraid of people, but they might just be like, what is wrong with these people?
Right.
I think a lot of times they see you driving into an area and they'll just hide out or just leave the area.
Mm-hmm.
They're not in the same areas all the time anyway. They seem to do, like a cycle or a pattern. Like they'll loop through an area. The audio tells that story quite a bit too, because it'll seem like there's some places have like a 7-day cycle, some places have like a 10-day cycle. They're not going to be there the whole time. I think they're roaming the area looking for resources.
You're probably right about that.
Yeah, well, the audio tells that. In the audio evidence from Chris's long term and other long terms, I have one out there too, but Chris does all the review. It'll be quiet for a lot of nights in a row, and then all of a sudden they're there, and then they go away, and then whatever amount of days later, here they are again, and then they seem to go away. I think they're not migrating, but they're moving through an area feeding. That's what I think, and then they come back through the area, and that's just a hypothesis, but the audio seems to tell that story.
Yeah, boy.
So what do you think?
I'm not convinced, man. I don't think Bigfoot's real.
Me either. I just like to waste my time doing this.
Well, I want to share. So, Todd, you've been in a bunch of my stuff. I want to share kind of a little bit of a list of documentaries that I've produced that you've been in.
Okay.
It's going to be a little bit of a list, but I guess the first thing you would watch is the Beyond the Trail episode. So everything I'm talking about is going to be on the Small Town Monsters YouTube channel for those of you who are interested. I'll also link the episodes in the show notes. And so the first one is the Beyond the Trail Olympic Bigfoot, which covers my time in the nest. And just kind of covers the whole nest site situation. Has Todd there, Shane Corson, Chris Spencer, a bunch of people we've been talking about already. Then after that, I think it would be my series, Mysteries and Monsters, about Southern California, starting with the legend of the SoCal Sasquatch. And that covers Todd's experience in Big Bear and a bunch of other stuff. That's a fairly decent series, if I have to say. If I had to judge my own series, I would say it's all right.
I've got some compliments on that too. On Facebook, yeah.
And then upcoming in November of this year, I'll be debuting a new series called Road to Discovery, which will be a 6-episode series focused on the Olympic project up in Washington State. And that has Todd featured pretty prominently.
Okay, cool. And then there's Seth's film too.
Yeah, we could talk about that. But
what's that called?
No.
On the Trail of
Bigfoot, The Discovery, which is available for rent or purchase on Amazon Prime or like iTunes or wherever you get your movies like that. That came out in 2021. That has Todd in it as well.
Yeah, the SoCal episodes really surprised me because we talked about doing it and I did the interview and we figured it'd be like 1 or 2 episodes if we stretch it, and it's ended up being 4 because the more you look into it, the more stuff you find.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I was really happy with it.
There's still a lot more to cover too. Like,
and I'm not happy with it because I'm in it. That's just besides the fact. I just like Bigfoot's content, and especially Southern California, because I know that area, and it's just really cool to see the mountains and all the areas you're talking about. I know exactly where you're talking about. That's what I enjoy. You know, it really hits home.
Yeah, well, actually, you helped me get in touch with one of my favorite interviews of the whole series with Dennis Rumner.
Yeah, we got lucky on that one because I haven't been in contact with him for like 30 years.
Yeah.
It's been, last time, no, maybe a little less, but last time I saw him was a long time ago. One time I saw him at went to Daniel Perez's house, but way back in the day when I used to go to Dennis's house, I was like 22 years old, 23. I'm 52 now, so yeah. 30 years ago is when I was in contact with him about all of his research. And he has quite a bit of stuff. And you're going to be using some of it in an upcoming series, right? Something about Bluff Creek or an episode or something.
That's something for Mysteries and Monsters down the line. Yeah, because Dennis Rumner is this old school researcher from SoCal. And like a lot of people, when he got involved, he started going up to Bluff Creek a lot. Like a lot of people did. They would go to the Bluff Creek area and do some Bigfooting. And he had some interesting stuff happen up there. But the big thing that I wanted to cover for SoCal was the handprint he got in Buena Park back in 1982, which is 40 years ago at this point.
Yeah, 41 years ago. I really wish I could get Cliff to make copies of that somehow. I got to figure out how to get copies of that because there's only one original. It's 41 years old.
Yeah.
And I saw it back in the day, but I didn't appreciate it like now. After all these years, I've been doing this stuff and finding my own evidence. Those fingers look huge,
Yeah.
you know, compared to your hand or my hand. They're really similar to the handprint I have here. So I'd really, really wish we can get a copy of that. But I don't think he'll want to let it go up to Cliff's museum. You know,
No.
he wouldn't want to ship it. But yeah, back in the day when I was young, like 22 or 23, I didn't appreciate it as much as I do now, because seeing it again on TV on your show, those fingertips look huge.
They are.
And I was like, oh my God, I forgot how big those things were.
They're not normal sized fingertips. So
like some people said it might have been a homeless guy.
no
Those
way.
aren't human fingers.
No way. And Dennis is a pretty tall dude. Now in his 80s, he's still about 6'1".
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those fingertips dwarf his. So
Yeah, I know he had a trackway out of Wrightwood in the snow. He showed me pictures years ago, and he told me some stories about up by Deer Lick Lake and Bluff Creek and stuff like that. You know, a lot of stuff I've forgotten. So when I saw those pictures again, it brought up. I'd even forgotten about the railroad tie thing with the sheriff.
yeah.
I totally forgotten about that story. It's been so long. And then I was like, oh yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And the trackway with that one, 15-inch tracks.
Yep. 15-inch tracks. That's big. That's a big human foot, if that's what you want to say it is. Plus, on top of that, lifting a railroad tie. My dad has worked for the railroad for many years, and on several occasions, he's gotten free railroad ties. Those things are huge. You're not picking that up by yourself.
And swinging it.
And swinging it, smashing a brick wall. No, that's not a person, you know?
Yeah, on top of the trackway, the stride and everything else, man. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. There's a few more people I want to interview. Peter Gattilla, I know he's still around. He just started a website this year. And
really?
I sent him, with like a contact me page, and I sent him an email. No response. I got in touch with Daniel Perez's friend, a guy named Doug Trapp, who lives in Texas now. He didn't want to be interviewed, but he said I could email him all the questions I want to ask him. And I'm like, that's not I don't want to ask. I don't know. It's not right. It's not what I'm looking for. I'm not. He treated it like I was new to the subject and was like trying to give me advice on how to look for these things, and was like his theories as to what they are. I was like, this is cool, I guess, but like I really need this on camera, otherwise I can't use it, because I have my own theories as to what these things are.
Yeah.
Frankly, I don't need another person's opinion on what these things are, you know. But
I was just happy you were able to get in contact with Dennis and get him on camera. Because I've been talking about this guy to everybody for years, and nobody knew who I was talking about.
Yeah.
So when you said you got an interview, I was so happy. It was cool, man. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have done it without you and his son Matt. So
thanks. That was cool. Yeah.
And I want to interview his friend who was also there at the Buena Foot location, a guy named Tom Muzilla, who I've been told is still around. So
oh wow. I was gonna ask if you want to interview him, you must still be alive. So that's good.
Yeah. You know, there's some people I've dug up, people like Rich Grumley, started the California Bigfoot organization, or Constance Cameron, that aren't around anymore, that I would have loved to interview.
It's got to be frustrating, all the years they put into this, and then they never really see it proven. That's happened time and time again with a lot of researchers.
Yeah.
I guess they know now, don't they?
I guess.
If you believe in that.
Who knows? I don't know if that's one of the things that's revealed to you when you die.
That's the first question I'm going to ask them. What is this thing? Because I know they're there. What is it? Anything else? What do you want to talk about?
That's it for now.
That was
man.
a good little segment.
Yeah. I want to say thanks for being on the show, man.
Oh, you got real lucky, buddy. You got real lucky. You know, I don't do many podcasts. I haven't done a podcast for probably a year and a half, at least. I always say no because I don't enjoy doing them. I only did it because I know you and I can talk to you, but I have a hard time talking to people I don't know. It's a bit different. It's weird. You know what I mean?
I'm keeping that in.
That's fine. It's weird to talk about all this with people I don't know. I've done a few shows, but it's easier with you because I've spent a lot of time with you already.
Well, sick.